am out here and it is gorgeous. Actually, it's amazing. Just as you started greeting everyone, the sun popped out. It was a dreary morning, raining a little bit, and just cloudy and kind of like, ugh. And then the second this started, whoosh, the sun just came out. So I'm feeling pretty good out here. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Welcome to this beautiful place. Uh, this spot is looking so good today. I want to switch my camera around just so you can see the view that I've got here. I'm gonna switch my lens around and take a look at this. Just beautiful right here in front of me. So we are out at a seasonal pond today, and we're going to talk about water and seasonal ponds and the life in the ponds. If you are coming to us from somewhere up north where the ground is covered in snow and ice, this might be looking, I'm going to switch back to me, pretty darn good right now. There I am. You might be thinking, oh, okay, now I see why people go down to Florida in the winter. Ooh, I just stepped in a hole. So you can see it's gorgeous out here. When I look at this view, I'm starting to think, what's going on out there? How many different things are happening in this ecosystem? And when the researchers come out here, we've been visiting this and other ponds for decades and decades, and they don't know it all. 100 years from now, they're not going to know it all, because ecology is not just listing what species are in an area. It's about understanding the whole system of how everything is connected. So it's the living things, it's those plants and animals and the fungi and all of that, but it's also the water and the weather, and natural cycles like fire, understanding the seasons, all of that, and how it all works together. There are so many stories to learn behind me. We will never run out of things to explore out here. So today on our virtual field trip, we're going to think a little bit about water and what's going on out here. Now, when it comes to ecology, the one thing to remember is location, location, location. Everywhere you go is going to have a different ecosystem. Every place has its own history and its own community of plants, community of animals, and the interactions between them. Every place is unique on our planet. So I want to zoom out for a minute. We're going to pull up a slide here so you can see, where am I right now? When I'm zooming to you on these virtual field trips, I'm coming from Archbold Biological Station. And some of you have been here before, but not everybody has. So take a look at this slide. Here's a picture of Florida from outer space. And if you look at it closely, can you see that in the middle of the state, there's a light little line, like a little line, kind of a spine, and it's lighter in color than the areas around it. You can see that blue spot kind of in the middle to the bottom. That's Lake Okeechobee. Just off to the west a little bit and north is that white spine. All right, next slide. That is where I'm coming from. That is the Lake Wales Ridge. And the triangles down there, that's the logo for Archbold. And that's where I am, whoop, right on the south end of that. That area that I highlighted is about 116, 120 miles long. And it's sand. It's a big pile of sand, an old sand island in the middle of the state. You can see how it matches the shape of the peninsula going north-south. Imagine the oceans higher than they are today, pushing sand into the center of the state. That's where we are right now. So this is the Lake Wales Ridge, is the highest part of the peninsula there. Right now where I'm standing is something like 120 feet elevation. But another part of Archbold goes all the way to over 200 feet. And up the road in Lake Wales, it goes to 300 feet, which for Florida is like a mountaintop. that's the highest part of Florida is on the Lake Wales Ridge, 300 feet or so. All right, we're going to go to the next slide. So I say we're going to think about water a little bit. Oh, before I go to that, I'm not going to read all of these, but the Lake Wales Ridge, because of the interesting history of being an island sometimes, and sometimes not being an island, depending on how high the ocean is, it has just an amazing biodiversity here, and an amazing mix of life. So some really rare plants, some rare animals in this area. It's a great place to have a biological field station, you can imagine. All right, next slide. Water is so important. When we think about life on our planet, water is the first thing, at least, that comes to my mind. And when we're looking out at other planets and thinking, could there have been life on Mars? We're thinking, well, was there water on Mars? And could we go and live somewhere on some other planet? We're going to ask, is it in an area that's has water on it? Most of our planet is covered in water, about 71%. And if you look at the Earth from outer space, it looks like a little blue dot. if you were an alien looking back at Earth. But check this image out. This is amazing. That blue bubble there is all of the water on our whole planet. Even though we think of our planet as a watery planet, and that's where life started on our planet, if you put it all together, that's the water in the oceans, the fresh water in the lakes, it's the water underground, it's the water in the glaciers. That's how much space it would take. Now, next slide, we're going to zoom in a little closer. There's two more. There's two more bubbles of water there. The next smallest one there, that is all the liquid fresh water. The liquid fresh water on the planet. So that does not include the glaciers, that frozen water. So when it comes to human needs and what we have available of fresh water on the planet, that's all we've got. And that includes the water that's underground as well. Can you see that there's an even smaller dot, little sphere of water bubble underneath that one? That is all of the fresh water that is on the surface. That's it. That is it for the whole planet. This is not just North America. This is the whole planet. So when we talk about water being important, my gosh, it's important. And number two, when we talk about pollution of water or keeping our waters clean, you can see how important that is. Our whole human species is relying on this water. Okay, you can stop sharing. Thanks, Margaret. And even our own bodies are filled with water. We're like little sacks of seawater walking around with our salty water inside of us. So I want to look a little more at the water right around us. I'm going to take my phone off of my selfie stick here, and I'm going to put it on. I've brought a tripod. Stick it on the tripod here. Excuse me for a second. While I stick it on here. Sorry, my hand is in the way. I'm going to stick it on here, and hopefully I won't drop it in the water. I have a demonstration I want to show you with the water here. Let me flip my backpack around. If you've tuned into this seasonal pond introduction to seasonal ponds before, you've heard me talk about the tannins in the water, and I want to explore that a little bit more with you. So I've got a demonstration. So first off, you can notice that the water here is pretty dark. I'm going to just scoop up some of it. It's pretty dark. Get a little bit more. And you might be wondering, why is it so dark? Well, your first thought might be, isn't that scary? I wouldn't want to walk around out there. Isn't there, an alligator or something hiding? Because you can't see it. The water is so dark. And yeah, there's all kind of critters out here. There could be snapping turtle or snakes, all kinds of cool stuff out here. But look at how dark this water is. It's filled with little bits of plants, the plants decomposing out here. And if we look closely, maybe there'd be some little critters in there, like a baby dragonfly or something. I don't know. Little fish, little tiny fish, maybe. I'm not seeing anything moving around. If we put it under a microscope, we'd see all kinds of stuff. I'll put the top on there for a minute. So where does this color come from? Why is it so dark? If you know the if you know the answer, I'm just gonna take that off. If you know the answer, you can put it in the chat. It has something to do with the plants around here. Now, what I'm standing in is a seasonal pond, which means that the water level here goes up or down, depending on the season. It's the dry season right now, so it's down pretty low. And some of the seasonal ponds here become totally dry this time of year. And then once late spring hits and the summer is here and it's raining, they'll fill up. This one, other times of the year, might be a foot deeper than it is right now, or even more than that. All right, I see some of the people got this one. Tannins. Tannins are chemicals that, as far as I know, all plants have, and they can be found in just about all the parts of their body. I'm not sure about flowers, but roots, bark, leaves, the center wood of the tree has tannins, and it's what protects it from mold, from bugs, from all kinds of things. Tannins are really bitter, and tannins are the same things that give tea its color. So this is essentially tea that I'm standing in. Now, I did actually bring real tea. Last night, I steeped some green tea here, and so here's the pond water. Here's the green tea I made last night, and there's even some green tea. There's even some tea leaves floating in there. And here's what I wanted to show you. Here's the demonstration I want to show you. I have a filter, so I'm going to drink some of this, and it's just tea. You can see it coming out. It doesn't have any sugar in it, so here's an empty bottle. You can see this actually filters it pretty well. It still has some of that color in there. Still has some of that color in there, but not as much as it did. And yeah, tastes like tea. A little bit of caffeine for me this morning. What about our water here? I'm gonna take my filter off, and I'm really curious to taste the water out here. I haven't done this before. I thought it would be good not to practice, so you could actually see this work in real time. I don't know what it'll taste like, but I'm curious to see if it tastes at all like tea. I really don't know. If I pop open the top here, and again, so you see how dark it is. Let's see some of it in here, and it's not as dark, but you can see it looks pretty clean. This filter is for campers, so if you're out really far away from anything, you can get water from creeks and stuff, and it'll clean it up for you so you can drink it. And yeah, tannin is very bitter, so let's see. Yeah, it's a good endorsement. Well, we'll see after I drink it. Not bad, not bad. I have to say, that actually tastes pretty good. It's better than I thought it would be. Now, it doesn't have the plant, the tea leaf actually isn't out here. This is coming from the grass, from the pine needles, from the oak trees, from all of that. And let me take another sip of that. Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, that's a pretty good endorsement for Sawyer. All right. Well, I'm gonna put this away. We have a guest with us, and he is one of our researchers here, Garrett, and he's going to talk about some of his work. So, are you there? Let's see if your video is working. Garrett, can you hear us? Margaret, is he here?
He is online. Let's see.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm here.
Hey! All right, well, I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'm going to hand it over to you. You got the next, 5 minutes.
Great. Hey guys, my name's Garrett. I am a researcher here at Archbold Biological Station, and today I wanted to share a little bit about what I do here and what I have done here over the last couple of years. So starting off, I was a herpetology intern actually 2 years ago, and I worked a lot with seasonal wetlands on the station. I got to work with all the cool reptile and amphibian species here. And as Mr. Dustin has talked about a number of times, a lot of those amphibian species rely on the wetlands around the station. So frogs will breed in the wetlands and live in the wetlands. And there are a couple of cool salamander species, like the two-toed amphiuma that Mr. Dustin caught a few episodes back. There in Muskrat Pond, where he is now, that live exclusively in the wetlands and can't live elsewhere. So some really cool stuff. The herpetology lab here was mainly interested in trying to see what wetlands certain species liked more than others, as well as when certain things were happening. So when are these frogs breeding in these wetlands, and what wetlands are better for that? What makes a frog like one wetland over another? Or what makes one species like one wetland over another? So that was kind of my introduction to Archbold, and I loved it, and so I came back. So right now I'm currently a research technician at Michigan State University, and I'm working here at the station on eastern mosquito fish. Eastern mosquito fish are just a small species of fish. They're only about an inch long, and they are super abundant across wetlands all over Florida. Actually, in fact, they're super abundant across wetlands all over the eastern United States. I'm not really sure where the northern extent of their range is, but they are probably the most abundant freshwater fish in all of the eastern United States. And in fact, they've even had some invasive populations in the western United States. I don't know if Mr. Dustin has talked about invasive and non-native species, but I won't get into that right now. But so we're really interested in how fish are going to cope with climate change. And that's a really big question moving forward. As global average temperatures rise with climate change, so too will the average water temperatures. And water temperature is really important for a lot of the fish species and amphibian species that live in those wetlands. Too high of a water temperature can be dangerous. It can start to hurt. Imagine being outside when it's 100 degrees, but there isn't really shade. There's no way for you to get out of that really hot temperature. And so it can be dangerous for the fish, and it can even cause them to die. And so we're really interested in looking at eastern mosquito fish, not because they will probably have problems with climate change. They're a very abundant species, very healthy, occupy a lot of different habitat types. And so they're not really at risk of going extinct with climate change. But we're using them as what's called a model organism. And I don't know if Mr. Dustin has talked about this before, or any of the other guest lecturers or researchers. But model organisms in science are species that are more common, but we can research more easily than some of the more rare or endangered species. So for eastern mosquito fish, they're everywhere. So it's really easy to get a lot of them from a lot of different cool places. And then we can see how they respond to climate change. And it's likely that other fish species and other even amphibian species in some cases and invertebrates in the water will react in a similar way. And so we can look at what happens with eastern mosquito fish and say, okay, well, we're seeing this in our experiments here. We can probably that probably means that we would also see it in this really cool endangered fish or this really rare fish that we don't really see as often where we're doing research. In Florida, there's a really cool fish species called the Everglades pygmy sunfish, and it's not threatened here in this state, but it is very restricted. It's only found in Florida. And so if we want to know how climate change may impact, say, the Everglades pygmy sunfish, then looking at eastern mosquito fish here in Florida would be a really good way to do that, and be able to get enough samples so that you can actually see what's happening. Another cool endangered fish species is the devil's hole pupfish. There are only a few of them, and they live in one puddle in the middle of the desert, in the desert southwest of the United States. And so you can't really do experiments on how climate change may affect those species because there aren't enough of them. And so by doing experiments like this, we can really see what may happen with other species, endangered species in the future. And so we can act and potentially prevent the extinction of that species. So the work is really important to do. And I'm happy to be back at Archbold doing it. That's really all I have for you guys. If you have any questions, I'll be on later for the Q&A, and I look forward to talking to you. Back to you, Dustin.
Thank you so much. Oh, really cool. I really like the format of these nature walks. I love being able to come out here and show you this and show you that. But being able to pull in the different researchers like that and hear what they're working on is so cool. And thanks for coming on, Garrett. And yeah, in about 10 minutes, we'll have the question and answer. So if you got questions, start typing them in there. For those who signed up through our website and are watching on Zoom, I will send you an email later in the week, and I'll put in there a link to the mosquito fish that he's talking about, since we weren't able to get it to pop up there. Now, Garrett did mention invasive species, and that's really cool because that is actually the next thing I was going to show you out here. Now, I'm on the edge of the pond now, so if you look behind me, there's the pond where we just were. So I'm right on the edge, and sometimes the edge of the pond is just as interesting as being in the pond itself. So what I want to show you is actually not a good thing, though. If you look behind me, you can see all of this soil, this dark soil, and it looks like somebody came through here and was plowing up the land, like it was on purpose. They came and plowed it because they were going to plant some vegetables or something. Now, nobody did that. No humans did that. This is the work of an invasive species. And if you know what species it is, you can type it in the chat. So what is an invasive species? What I'm talking about is a species that didn't originally live in that community, in that ecosystem, in that area. So a species that's at home in one place, if it is brought to a different place, could be an invasive species there. And it means that it's throwing off the balance a little bit. Now, after it's been there for hundreds of years, maybe it reaches a balance, maybe it doesn't. Those are big questions for science. This species has been here for around 500 years, and I still don't think it's quite reached its balance yet, but it doesn't look like they're going anywhere. What did this? This was done by feral hogs, pigs. The Spanish brought them over here around 500 years ago. They're quite tasty to eat, but now there are so many of them all over the US. There's a ton in Texas. There's a lot in Florida. At Archbold, we don't know how many we have. It doesn't seem like there's that many at this site at our main property, and we don't have any plan at this site to trap them or to remove them. But at our ranch down about 8 miles from here, we think we have at least 500 hogs there, and we do trap them. We have a research project where we put radio collars on them and study where they move. So it's a big problem, but it is also an opportunity for research. I see in the chat someone asked about Burmese pythons. Currently, we've never seen any here at Archbold or at Buck Island Ranch. And there aren't any official, ones that have been caught in the area. There are definitely people who have claimed to see them, but it's hard to say, if you don't catch one, if that's really what it was or not. But Burmese pythons are a big problem a little further south than we are right here, because we're kind of still north. Well, not really. We're more central. I can show you a little up close, a little bit more here, what this damage looks like. Because right in front of me, I'll switch my camera. You can see on the ground here, it looks like a hog was in here rooting around. I'm not sure what roots these are here. Maybe eating some roots, looking for whatever. They eat just about anything. And there could be some, I don't know what they'd be eating. Anything they can find, frogs or whatever. They're omnivores, so eat plants and animals. And we can see as we move along here, there's another spot there that was dug up right there. And I'll switch this back around. Oops, excuse me, I just got stuck in some vines. And again, here's that area behind me there that looks like a trail, but it never looked like a trail before. This is the first year it's looked like that. Okay, I don't want to dwell too much on sad stuff like that, invasive species. But I will say they are tasty and they make good food for the Florida panther, which is an endangered species. There's some other cool stuff out here, some vines. And this is the only place that I've actually seen poison ivy here at Archbold. So I'm going to show you some poison ivy, show you how to identify it, and show you there's a couple of vines out here. One's poison ivy, one's not. So get down low here. The first one I'm going to show you is not poison ivy. Let me switch my lens. This one here, does anybody know what this is? There's a vine here. Here, I got it in focus for you. What could this be? This is a pretty common plant in Florida. Yes, and the Rileys, who are always very impressive with their IDing skills. All right, it's a wild grape. And you can see these leaves are pretty small. Let's see if I can find one. It's a little bit, here we go. This one's a little bit bigger, maybe easier to focus on. And the wild grape are, there we go, pretty round. And you can see the edges are serrated here all the way around. And the whole thing is pretty circular. But if I go down a little bit, what do we have here? This is the plant that made my summers not too fun when I was a kid. There's our poison ivy. I think I had 3 summers in a row when I was a kid getting poison ivy, and there's an oil on poison ivy that's in the leaves and in the stems, and if that gets on you, that's what reacts. Most people are allergic to this. Not everybody, most people are. And I saw one. I think the light's not good there. I'm gonna switch it back to I first saw one on this tree that right next to me here, but the sun's kind of blasting me. So when I was a kid, I had a friend, one of my best friends, and she did not get, she was immune. So we always go out into the woods. We'd visit Virginia and go out in the woods, and I would always get it all over my arms, and she wouldn't. So be careful when you're out. You could see that had leaves of 3, let it be. It's always 3. They can look different, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller. Sometimes the edges look more serrated than others. That's one of the reasons they're so hard to identify. But if you stick with that leaves of 3, let it be, you're pretty good. There's another one called Virginia creeper that has 5 leaves, and that's easy to confuse too. But remember, 5 leaves. Okay, I want to pull, I think let's see, it's 10:01. I want to show you part of another video. How much rain do we receive at Archbold? Well, check this out. Here's the average annual rainfall here, 135 centimeters. That's about 53 inches per year. This is the average. Every year is different. If we go up here, we can see in the year 1953, we had a lot of rain that year. We had over 6 feet and 4 inches. If we go down, our lowest annual rainfall since the early 1930s was in the year 2000. We had 2 feet, 3 inches of rain in the year 2000. There's a lot of variation here. 50, 55 inches of rain a year, that's pretty good. If this was a desert, you'd have hardly any rain. If there was a jungle, you could have twice as much or more than that. But as you can see, there's a lot of variation. The other thing about the rainfall at Archbold is most of that comes during only half of the year. The rainy season is mid-May through mid-October. Most of that rain falls. And then the other half of the year can be a drought sometimes. Imagine if you were a plant or an animal surviving out here, and half the time there's lots of rain and even floods or hurricanes. And then the other half of the year, it's a drought. At Archbold, our researchers study ecology. That means not just the living things, but the non-living things like weather and soil, and how they all interact together. So for example, knowing about the weather from year to year, and knowing about the times that certain flowers bloom every year, if we look at it together, we can see how the weather affects that. Or we can look at data on gopher tortoises and Florida scrub jays and see how they are changing and reacting and adapting to weather as it changes throughout the seasons, and maybe even over long periods of time. Great. Well, that's about our time. We're going to go to questions and answers in a minute, but just a couple final thoughts here. So this pond is called Muskrat Pond or Neofiber Pond. Neofiber is the scientific name for the muskrat. And I've actually seen a Florida muskrat out here once, maybe 4 years ago now, when I was out here with some summer campers. That was very exciting. They make their homes in the grass out here. But we have hundreds of ponds at Archbold, hundreds of ponds. And the final point I want to make is when you're trying to imagine how the ecosystem works out at a place like Archbold, and in some ways it's very dry out here. If I walk just 20 steps that way, I'll be on sand again. I'll be on white sand again. And it'll feel almost like a desert. And yet in spots like this, where the elevation just dips a little bit, just a little dip, the water from the rain will gather in those spots. And over years and years of this, you end up with beautiful, rich, dark soil like this, because the plants will grow up and die and get recycled back into the soil and build this soil. If we dug down under here, we would still find sand. We'd have to get down a little bit through all this organic soil below us. All right, well, that's about all I wanted to say today, and I'm hoping that we've got some questions lined up. And Garrett, will pull you back too if you want to put your video back on. So Margaret, did we get any questions? Oh, and so if you have to go, I know some people have to leave after half an hour or so. It's good to have you. Hopefully you'll be here next week. Hope to see you again, my friends. Hasta pronto, amigos. And let's take some questions.
Yes, we do have a few good questions that have come in. A lot of them are for Garrett. So there's lots of mosquito fish questions. The first one is from the Riley family. They are located in Virginia, and they said that we've observed mosquito fish in our marsh and noticed that some of them have some kind of disease, fuzzy stuff on the fins. They get kind of ratty looking. Do you know anything about this?
So I'll start by saying I'm not a fish expert. First and foremost, I'm a herp guy. However, fish do get a lot of fungal infections. In the pet trade especially, there's one that I would probably call it's called ick, that they get. It's caused by this nasty fungus that ends up growing these big fleshy bodies on the fish itself and can cause some problems. So it's probably a fungal infection. And actually, interestingly, Climate change may help with those fungal infections because increased water temperature can typically kill off the fungus. And so there are all of these weird interactions that happen with ecology and with climate change. And so who knows? Who knows what'll happen?
And the next mosquito fish question is the mosquito fish the gambusia?
It is. Yeah, Gambusia holbrooki is the eastern mosquito fish.
Awesome. And then next mosquito fish question is,
Yeah.
do you study the mosquito fish in the wild in ponds, or do you have them in tanks?
So our tanks come from ponds, but yes, we do study them in tanks. We're actually studying their thermal tolerances. I kind of hinted at this with the climate change earlier, but we're looking at what temperatures really stress these fish out. So we have them in tanks, both outdoor and indoor tanks, doing experiments with the fish.
Awesome. A seasonal pond question from Karen is, if the ponds are seasonal, which part of the year do they have water, and which part of the year, sorry, I think that's asking, when do they have water and when would they hold water year round potentially? I believe that's the question.
Yeah, good question. That weather station video that we played part of had a graph, and you could see that even though Florida gets a pretty good amount of rain, around 50, 55 inches of rain a year, most of that comes during half of the year. So it's, if I get it right, mid-May to mid-October, I think is when it ends, that rainy season. And the other half of the year doesn't get much rain at all. So right now it's the middle of the dry season. This pond is one of the deeper ones, so it always has some water in it. But if we really walked all around the property, you would see a lot of dried up ponds this time of year. And then late spring, as the rains start coming back, you start to fill back up again. So if you came in August or in September, you would have ponds everywhere. And each year is a little different. Some years there's a lot more rain than others. If you have years with hurricanes too, that brings a lot of extra rain. And so when you do have really wet years, those ponds not only will they fill up, but they'll start connecting to each other because there's so much water. They'll start connecting, and it's one of the ways that the animals in the water, like the fish, will actually connect to different ponds. And in a negative way, that's how invasive species can spread, because we do have invasive fish like the cichlid that makes its way even to a remote pond like this, because on those wet years they're all connected. So this time of year, even though I'm at a pond, I found one that still had water. This is the time where the ponds are mostly empty.
Awesome. A question that was asked towards the beginning of the webinar was, how much tannins do pine needles have?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount that they have, but they have tannins for sure. Actually, the sand pine, and I don't know if I'm seeing the pines around me here. All the ones I'm seeing are slash pine. So I don't know about those, but sand pine is a common pine in Florida too. That one you can make tea out of. I've made tea out of that, and it's high in vitamin C. If you search for it online, you can find videos of survivalists and hunters and campers out in the woods, and they'll just grab a bunch of needles, fresh needles, and just stick them in some boiling water over the campfire and have some refreshing tea. It's not real strong. It's a mild tea. You got to make sure you know what plant you're doing, because you could also poison yourself. I mean, plants are like nature's medicine cabinet. Just like you wouldn't want to take somebody else's medicine, you don't want to take the wrong medicine. You don't want to do the same thing with nature. Yeah, poison ivy. Don't make poison ivy tea. Also, don't burn poison ivy. So the oil, you can get it from touching it, but if you burn poison ivy and breathe that in too, that can be really bad as well. So nature is a medicine cabinet, and humans, long before modern medicine, have been using nature. And even today, there's still people, herbalists that know about nature's medicine cabinet and could tell you, okay, you got a headache or you've got this or that. this is the plant to use. So that stuff is pretty cool.
Awesome. Karen asked, are most of the ponds in open areas, or are there some in forest areas as well?
Oh gosh, what a cool. Well, there's lots of different kinds of fresh water in Florida. A seasonal pond is, as far as I understand, the ones that are called seasonal ponds are always in more open areas. The reason is because the trees in those spots can't stand the water. So in the scrub, you've got a couple different pine trees and a lot of oak trees, and that's basically it for trees. So the slash pine, the ones around me here, they can stand a little bit of water. So you will see some pine trees in the seasonal ponds, but mostly what you'll see is grass. Like if you're walking around in the dry season, in this area, there's lots of little oak trees and lots of palmettos all over the place. Then all of a sudden you step past a ring of palmettos and you see grasses and some different kinds of plants, and you know, okay, this is a seasonal pond. But if you are in an area with cypress trees, those cypress swamps, they're not called seasonal ponds, but they also are the water level is highly regulated by rainfall there too. So we don't call them seasonal ponds, but the cypress swamps, same thing. You go part of the year and it's 3 feet of water, another part of the year and it looks dry, or maybe there's just a tiny bit of water. If you live in this area, or if you ever travel to this area, Archbold is still closed to the public right now, but Highlands Hammock State Park, which is next to Sebring, Florida, or in Sebring, Florida, it's a wonderful state park. You can still go camping there. They have a fantastic cypress swamp trail. Highly recommend it. And you can see another type of freshwater system in Florida that also changes a lot with the rain.
There's a question going back to the poison ivy comment about burning it. Vicky wants to know if poison ivy is a problem during controlled burns.
I've never heard it being a problem. Like I said, this is the only spot, this tree here, that I've actually even seen it out here. So I don't think we have a lot of it here. But if just what I've read online is don't burn it. Don't breathe it in. But I've never heard of it actually being any issue for land managers. Good question.
Question for Garrett is, so earlier the Riley family asked about Burmese pythons, and I feel like it would be a waste to have you on here and not have you talk about snakes a little bit. What is the coolest snake / herp that you've seen on station or just in Archbold generally? I mean, sorry, not Archbold, Florida generally.
Oof, that's a really hard question. As someone who absolutely loves herps, it's very difficult for me to choose my favorite things, but Archbold does have a lot of really cool snakes and lizard species. So probably my favorite here at the station has been eastern indigo snakes, but also Florida pine snakes are incredibly cool, neither of which you can really readily see in many other places. And even here, they're not super common, but both very cool species. In Florida in general, probably my favorite snake to see is probably eastern diamondback in Florida. They're just such majestic and magnificent snakes that it's hard to beat.
We
Awesome.
will next week, heads up, because we will show you a pine snake. We're going to show you a Florida pine snake. Margaret, actually, who's normally not in front of the camera during these, she's going to show you all Miss Poser, the pine snake that lives at our learning center. It's an educational snake.
The Riley family has a follow-up question about snakes. Are there cottonmouths there? And is Dustin in danger of wading in a pond in bare feet?
So, I don't know if you wanted to take this, Dustin.
You go. No, go for it. I'm curious to see what you say.
Yeah. So actually, cottonmouths don't really range this far south into Florida. There are only cottonmouths in the very northern extent of Florida. So in the Panhandle, a little bit a little bit farther east as well. So no, not really. I mean, the only thing I would be concerned about, I may not be the person to talk to about this because I also walk barefoot in ponds. But I mean, he could step on an alligator or have, there are some very large biting aquatic invertebrates in the ponds too, called toe biters actually. That would may be unpleasant, but even I've had other herp interns tell me they've stepped on alligators at the station. But the alligators are very scared. You step on the back of them, they're just going to swim away. They don't want to interact negatively with you. So, so no, I don't think Dustin's really in too much danger.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
We do have, we didn't play it this time, but some of you have been on here before and you've seen the video of catching the Amphiuma, and that could also bite. But there is always some risk in everything you do. But one of the things that I like about being an outdoor educator is showing people that it's not like when you, a lot of times on TV, on the nature shows, they make everything look so super dangerous. And if they were going to show this, they'd say, what lurks beneath? There's an alligator, and there's this, and they try to make it seem so scary. And I hate that because it keeps people from exploring. Now you want to be smart when you're out, and you want to be respectful of nature. If you did see an alligator, you wouldn't want to go up and start poking it. And like the poison ivy, learn how to tell what's poison ivy so you're not going and grabbing it or sticking it in your mouth. But I don't mean to say that there aren't things that are dangerous. People can get injured, you can die. But just like you can die, driving your car or doing anything else, I think that people vastly overestimate the danger of going on a hike like this in Florida.
Alrighty, I believe that is all the questions that we have had today. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. If I did, we will be answering questions in the post email that we send out. Also, we will attach a link to the really cool website Dustin used earlier with the showing the amount of water in the world compared to the United States. And that's all I have to say. Do you have anything to say, Dustin?
Thank you all for joining again. So wonderful. And Garrett, that was really cool. I definitely learned something from your talk. So thank you as well. And hopefully we see y'all next week. Oh, there is a science talk this Thursday. And that's one of our interns doing her final project of something she's been working on for the last about 6 months. So that is not one for kids. That'll be graphs, lots of graphs and math. But if you want to give it a try, that should be pretty cool. I don't remember what it's about. Plants. I don't know. Do you remember, Margaret? What the we should have looked it up.
It's about Garbaria and I believe the blooming cycle of Garbaria.
Flowering time and
the
Garbaria.
Flowering time, yeah.
And I think maybe she's looking at historic data to see if it's changing over time. That's my guess. Go to our website; it'll be on there. You can read about it. So thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks, y'all. Thanks, Garrett. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We'll see you next week.